Welcome to Red, White, and Blue. From the right, I'm Gary Polland.
And from Gary's left, I'm David Jones.
From everybody's left. Tonight we welcome Harris County Judge Ed Emmett and Harris County Attorney Vince Ryan. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
But we have to know right from the beginning, Mr. Emmett, Judge Emmett, are you waiving your attorney-client privilege here?
Since this is not official duty, probably so. Yes.
Vince, do you accept?
I'll let him know if he is breaching that particular consequence.
You both were recently prominently displayed in the Houston Chronicle as being sort of advocates, and we don't need to get into every little detail of those opinion pieces, but as advocates for being the watchdog of county government and having ideas about how to reform county government. You more prominently than Vince in that dueling op-ed in the Chronicle. So why don't we start with you? What's wrong with county government that has you so enraged that you want to talk about it in the terms that you did?
Well, I don't know that enraged is the right word, but we're dealing with a county with 4 million people. It's larger than 24 states. And county government should be like any other large entity. It should reform itself constantly. Too frequently, people look at county government and they say, it's always been that way. That's the way we've always done it. We've always given contracts to those people. We've always done it this particular way. And I just think that's the wrong approach. I think we should always have a plan of succession for key public officials, not elected officials, but the appointed ones. We should have clear lines of authority. And if somebody violates the ethics, then we need to take action, because that's where ethics comes into this entire discussion. If you don't have a solid grounding in an ethics policy, then your other policies are not taken as seriously as they should. But by and large, my whole thing is not about ethics. It's about the way government operates. Zero-based budgeting, all the aspects of it that we need to get to so that we can continue to be this growing, vibrant county.
I understand. But, we all know that there was a commissioner who got into some trouble, right? That's all still pending. We're not going to talk about that. But there was also this recent sort of revelation of a scandalous matter where someone working for your budget director sort of was looking the other way as people were, entertaining themselves in New York on these trips and maybe not properly revealing their invoices for same. And there is one thing that I saw that is a focus for that argument that I saw at Commissioner's Court and in these within the lines of these opinion pieces that you have, and that was your budget director. He's been there longer than Gaddafi's been in Libya. What are we hanging on to this guy for? Anybody want to take that?
Well, there's 5 people he works for directly, and then there's the Harris County he works for indirectly. When we talk about county government, David and Gary knows this, so certainly the judge, I tell folks I left county government as Mike Driscoll's first assistant 21 years to the day that I came back as the county attorney. So one thing, government does move slowly. It took me 21 years to get promoted. But it's a great promotion. But that's a different perspective than the judge. I've seen a lot of changes in county government in that 21 years. Some good, some bad, some indifference. And then the recent issues we're talking about actually occurred 2008, early 2009. And those issues have been directly addressed and have been dealt with, and the system reformed as it should have been in the first place, as the judges advocated, so that there are checks and balances that did not exist prior to January 1st, 2009. Some of those checks and balances were already in the law.
So you disagree that there was a rogue operation in the budget director's office that resulted in the scandal that was revealed?
No, I don't disagree. One that's now in the criminal courts, so that's where it lies. But those issues that arose then have been resolved. There's now checks and balances that are being exercised by the county auditor, by the county attorney's office, by the district attorney's office, by other officers. I think there's a lot more reflection by the Commissioner's Court directly on who is a subordinate of the Commissioner's Court, which is Dick Raycraft and all the people who work for Dick Raycraft. And over one of the changes in 21 years, there has been a consolidation in county government of various departments under public infrastructure and under Dick Raycraft Management Services. There are some pluses, there's some minuses to that.
Well, and as a follow-up, Vince, aren't you supposed to be coordinating county ethics policy as the county attorney?
Well, in fact, we do enforce county ethics.
Okay. I want to know.
Those ethics are stated by state law and federal law.
I understand. What are your 3 most significant accomplishments in the 2+ years you've been in office?
Well, the Edwin Harrison thing that the judge has highlighted, and which David alluded to, we have reformed, when I say reform, we have implemented what the law requires in the Selection Bond Council, for instance, in making sure the county auditor's office does the in-depth review of virtually every transaction that involves money. We've worked very closely with other officials. We developed what I call the 3-visit rule with the district attorney, who we have a very good working relationship with, and that 3-visit rule is a very simple one. And this happened only one time. We only had to do this one time. There was a nonprofit corporation, which is another change in county government. Several nonprofit corporations have been created by state legislature, enacted by the county, and in every one of those cases they can choose either the county attorney as their attorney or outside counsel. We took the position from day one that whether they have outside counsel or not, the county attorney is still the representative for the people of Harris County. One of those groups was having executive sessions. 80-90% of their meeting was an executive session. They refused to let our assistant county attorney in. We said, assistant county attorney needs to go in, but presumptively you cannot meet 80%, 90% of the time in an executive session. They said, oh, we're going to keep on doing that. We then approached the DA's office, and they agreed with us. And the next meeting with that particular organization, an assistant DA showed up, we showed up, and we had the second of the 3 visits, which is them telling this group you cannot presumptively meet in executive session like this. You have to stop that. And also, in our opinion, I let the county attorney's office be inside that executive session anyway. And what you don't want, the DA's office said, is the 3rd visit, just from us.
Okay, so
that went a long ways.
All right, well, you mentioned.
Well, that's a real key.
We talked about
meetings.
But you also mentioned the bonds. I want to know, Edwin Harrison. I got a real simple question. Why wasn't this guy terminated when it was revealed he was basically being bribed by outside counsel?
Well,
why wouldn't that happen?
That's a decision by the Commissioner's Court through their subordinates.
You can't bring an ethics lawsuit to get rid of him as the ethics coordinator? You couldn't do anything?
One is, it is the prerogative to hire and fire any employee under the umbrella of the management services by the Commissioner's Court or through their designees, which in this case is Dick Raycraft.
So you couldn't do anything about that?
Well, one is he was shifted to a position where he wasn't involved anymore, and we were focused on reforming the system.
Why were we keeping to pay a guy who was basically ripping off the county?
Ask the judge and his colleagues.
You don't
well,
know.
Judge, you've got some responsibilities here as far as doing something with the bureaucracy of Harris County. Now, as I understand it, we have 14 juvenile probation directors and assistant directors with cars that are going back and forth from home to the office. They have far fewer people on probation and juvenile probation than adult, and there are only 3 facilities. Why do we need these kind of cars, especially with $100,000 and up salaries for this type of bureaucracy?
You know, I'll get to that, David. I'm not sure how we got from a major scandal involving bond counsel to juvenile probation officer.
So let's hear a follow-up first about bond counsel.
I'm just trying to make it interesting.
Yeah, I'm not gonna let this go because the problems were apparent for years, and nobody would step up. And in fact, the person who was accused of all these wrongdoings called up to my staff and said, people in this building aren't happy that you're asking questions. So I go to Dr. Raycraft and I said, look, these things are going on. We need to do something about it. And Dr. Raycraft has done a great job for Harris County over the years. But in this particular case, for whatever reason, the ball got dropped. As far as the county attorney's office, and they did a good job on the criminal side. But remember, Edwin Harrison's not standing trial for anything done at the county. He's standing trial for supposedly ripping off a relative. Is that correct?
Well,
that's what he was indicted for. Is that correct?
Judge, just so the audience is
it's
clear.
It's a yes or no, Vance.
Well, no, because you said the criminal prosecution. In Harris County, like several other counties in the state, the county attorney is the civil attorney for county government. The district attorney is the criminal prosecutor for the county.
So did you ever come to the county and say, we've uncovered these ethics violations with Edwin Harrison?
Well, we certainly referred, after that person who was the whistleblower was referred by you to us, we looked at it, and as we delved into it, looked to us like there were criminal violations. We immediately started working with the district attorney's office, and that's where the criminal violations ought to be and are.
But
At the same time,
simultaneously, did you ever come to the policymakers, the commissioner's court, and say, we've uncovered these severe ethics violations?
Well, certainly
and
we
you
did.
should
Of course we
remove
did.
it.
Well, we didn't say remove Edwin Harrison. That's your determination, but we've been to the Commissioner's Court several times to discuss the different policy changes needed to take place so the Edwin Harrison situation, which almost all happened before January 1st, 2009, when I took office, when other new officials took office in the county, to include the district attorney. And we have rectified so those things do not occur, or if they do occur, they'll be a lot more apparent, a lot quicker.
Okay, that's fair, but let's ask about something you do control. Bond counsel, Greenberg Torrig, this law firm, they were part of the bribery, and they got a new bond deal from the county. What is going on here?
Just one is, until the reforms were acted, the statutory authority for the county attorney to pick bond counsel has been in existence, interesting enough, since 1996. When I left the last time, it had been taken away by the legislature after we had, meaning Mike Driscoll, had sued Vincent Elkins, Fulbright Jaworski, et cetera, over who's going to be the toll road attorneys. The one thing we lost in special legislation was bond counsel. In 1996, it was reinstated, but between 1996 and January 1st, actually probably about the spring of 2009, when we rediscovered that law, the county attorney had never exercised that authority. One of the reforms is now the county attorney picks bond counsel.
I understand.
And we're not just talking about Greenberg Torrig being involved. We're talking about virtually every one of the major law firms in Houston at one time or another was engaged in one of these transactions that took place over a period of time of bond and refinancings. Greenberg Torrig was the very first to reimburse the county for fees that and expenses that they had not documented. Neither had several other major firms.
Yes, but there were other firms you could use, Vince. I mean, come on. I mean, these people have basically violated at least the ethics laws, and we're rewarding them because after they get caught, they didn't voluntarily give the money back. You caught them. You caught them, or somebody caught them, and they said, "Oh, wait a minute, we're sorry. Let us give the money back." They should have never done it. And so instead, we have a situation where you go out and reward them. Are they your friends? Is that why they get business? I mean, what is happening here? Come on, there's other people that do this work that don't bribe county employees.
Having been in the media, I know you got to bleed to lead. So you're dramatizing something that occurred over a long period of time, and a standard of process occurred that started to change. One, when the whistleblowers took a step forward after Judge Emmett referred them, but also we were already in the process of reviewing all those things starting January 1st, 2009.
Hey, listen, I could assure you that anybody watching this
firms that you're talking about are the major law firms that permeate the legal landscape in Houston. The practice became, and I might add, the authorization to pay by and through with approval of the county auditor came from the Commissioner's Court in each of these
I understand,
types
but
of
they didn't
transactions.
know that the scam was going on.
So basically what you're saying, Vince, is the Commissioner's Court pretty much is a dysfunctional body in terms of regulating anything. And that brings up a good position that you two guys are probably aligned with, and that is the preservation of the 4 commissioners as is with the new redistricting plan that shut out the growth in the population of the Hispanic majority in order to protect El Franco Lee. And I would bet that, I mean, you probably have to defend this when it goes to the Justice Department. Are you prepared to do that? And is that what you did? You guys saw where the votes were, where black voters are more important than brown voters? Let's take care.
I'm going to rely on my counsel.
What we need to do is commit. We can have 4 of these programs so we can explain any one of these issues a little bit more in depth than a half an hour allows. But the redistricting has, one is not quite. The package to fully explain this is about this thick, going through 8 different criteria. We presented the Commissioner's Court while we can choose the attorneys for the counties, and this because it's a very particular thing the Commissioner's Court is very interested in. We presented 2 options to the Commissioner's Court. They chose one of the law firms. Interesting enough, one of those law firms was also one of the bond counsels, or during these transactions we were talking about just a second ago. But they are very experienced in redistricting. That's Andrews Kurth. At the same time, Heath Bickerstaff, we opt for that opportunity. They are the ones that did the city's redistricting, which is quite different because of the shifting boundary lines of the different council districts and also the addition of 2 council districts. Ours was a much more straightforward, simple scenario of 4 precincts aligning them in such a way that it meets the Voting Rights Act in a progressive way. And I'm confident if that package is fully reviewed, even by those that are criticizing it, that their questions are answered. But again, it takes a deep review of what was done, very appropriately by the Commissioners Court.
In other words, they both think it'll pass muster, Dave.
Yeah.
Seems like it. Seems like it.
Right.
So we have 4 commissioners, each of them with 1 million people in their precincts. Can we all agree that? Yeah, 1 million.
Right at 1 million.
Can we all agree that this is not a healthy situation for voters who are, are lost within these precincts? Why don't we get authority to subdivide and have 6 or 8? Let's bring commissioners closer to the people.
Well, the Texas Constitution is what it is, and it says 4 county commissioners. And
they're dictators within their own precincts.
I wouldn't use that term, but I would say that
you can't check against anything that goes wrong within a precinct.
The truth of the matter is, in all my speeches, I use Harris County with 4 million people and Loving County with 82 people, and we each have 4 commissioners. That's part of the government reform. But in order for that to happen, the commissioners are going to have to be part of it. And are there ways that they can cooperate better? Are there ways that vehicles can be shared? Are there ways that a lot of counties have a unified road district? We don't have that. I'm not saying that's necessarily the answer, but at a time where our revenues have gone flat, we need to start looking at the way we do business, and part of it is always going to be personality driven and politics driven. And we have to somehow get around that into a government structure that works more efficiently.
So if we can get some reforms in the areas you've talked about, Judge, what you're saying is we can make the existing scarce dollars go further.
Absolutely.
We've got Moody's that has placed us on a watch list because of our weakening tax base. I don't know that anybody here is going to be predicting that we're going to be a surviving economy anytime soon.
But we're ahead of the United States.
Are we going to be raising taxes in order to make up for lost revenue in the future?
David's asking you to raise taxes.
It's far too early to say that. We'll look at this fall and we'll see what our needs are and what the revenues are projected to be, right? The problem with county government finances is that it's all based on the property tax. So even if the economy turns around tomorrow, we don't benefit from that sales tax turnaround. We don't benefit really until the mortgage crisis goes away.
Why is it that the county, at least for the unincorporated areas, doesn't get some sales tax revenue?
It's back to the way the state of Texas has things set up.
Because the city of Houston gets
sure.
sales tax revenue.
Sure.
And that's interesting.
And in fact, a side point to make, Harris County, the unincorporated part of the county, would be the 7th largest city in the U.S., and the only level of government is county government.
Well, that may be something interesting you ought to look at. I mean, that's not unfair.
Ed and Gary both have more involvement with this subject than I do, but nevertheless, it's one I raised a while ago, which has to do with juvenile probation. And you are somewhat in charge of that. I mean, what about those cars? What about saving some money with these cars? And what about the duplication of services between the Children's Assessment Center and the County Protective Services Division? They're both involved in CPS assessment work. Why can't we do something with that?
Well, no, I think Vince and I would be in total agreement on Children's Assessment Center and CPS, and the way they work together is really very good.
Do we need the children's?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, the county. Do we need the county aspect of
absolutely.
that service?
And
okay.
In fact, CPS is funded by the state.
They divide up, especially on the most serious cases. The Child Assessment Center does certain things after the CPS or before even CPS.
Well, with a referral, often with criminal.
And they work closely with all the law enforcement agencies.
Yes. In fact, we have
it's probably,
staff of attorneys there.
Yeah, it's probably a great example of the way other government functions should work.
Okay, so that's
it's
good.
Cooperative. Now,
I don't hear either of you objecting probably to the
talk about the cars,
new position of public defender. He announced today we're going to have a juvenile public defender position that is going to take over in October. Neither of you oppose the increasing of bureaucracy in that sense.
I think it's a much more effective way of representing poor people.
I disagree. I think you're wrong. We'll see what the judges do. We'll see what the juvenile judges do in terms of that. I think they're going to be treated like everybody else. The fact is, the present free market system works better because the county offloads responsibility, Vince, for retirement, secretaries, medical insurance, and benefits.
Let me use an example how that's not correct. Private sector attorneys are very expensive. The Port Authority right now is using millions of dollars in outside counsel, as opposed to the county model, where our average rate for overhead salaries, expenses for Harris County Assistant County Attorneys, to include the county attorney, is about $66 an hour. And I'd stack up our attorneys against any group of attorneys, even with the budget cuts and the reductions in force.
And I understand what you're saying.
But we're not the same thing with the well-managed public defender system.
That's just, if you look around the country, major public defender systems in major jurisdictions are failing everywhere. Because they don't have
criminal justice system is succeeding. We've got the highest incarceration rate in Harris County.
That's something that the judge is working on. That's a different issue.
We've got the highest incarceration rate in the country for the state.
That has nothing to do with
we put people in jail that everybody else.
Could be the lawyers have dropped the ball. That what you're saying?
No, there's a whole industry.
Would you like to get back to efficiencies on cars? Sure.
I enjoy discussing things.
That's one of the areas we do need to reform. In fact, the sheriff's office was just put under Fleet Services in the last year or so. When the auditor did their final audit of the previous sheriff, and this is not anything negative about him, but 40% of the assets they couldn't find. I think it was 40%. And where were they? And it's because all of the elected officials kind of run their own shop. So you talk about vehicles. I think every car allowance ought to be reviewed. Every county car ought to be reviewed annually to see if that's really needed. I did it in my office. And then I think you'll find some people who are getting a car allowance and driving a county car at the same time.
Yeah, who wants to drive a Plymouth?
That doesn't sound right.
And that's not
Please
right.
refer them to our office if that's the case.
Vince, I got a hypothetical for you.
Uh-oh.
If a county official is found to have accepted gifts in violation of state law or failed to report gifts as required, will you seek their removal from office?
Depends on how serious the offense is.
Depends how much the gift was?
Well, it can depend on how it happened, how it occurred. Also, the Attorney General's got authority in these matters. The district attorney, if it's a criminal, conscious decision to avoid the law, we probably would work very closely with the DA's office, who again has been very proactive and worked very closely with us so that, and I said during my campaign, I still say, long before a public official commits a criminal act in their official duties or have to do with their official duties, it's usually a civil violation. So we have to work together with the criminal prosecutor, and if we saw something like that, we probably would refer it immediately to the DA's office, bring them in, and if it looks like it's a criminal offense, certainly if they were convicted, we would probably either seek for removal or in certain circumstances, depending upon the conviction, they would be automatically removed.
But you don't have to wait for the DA's office. You can seek a civil removal under appropriate circumstances, can you not?
We can, but if you're talking about criminal matters, the expertise at Harris County is in the district attorney's office, not in the county attorney's office. Talking about civil removal, it's in our office. And I found this when I was there before, and it's the case now. If you've got a district attorney and county attorney who want to work together, and that's the real, we were talking about county government. I, of course, spent 6 years in city government. And while you had a litany of issues that we were talking about county government, I would argue every day. In fact, my standard stump presentation is a comparison of the strongest strongman form with the county form of government. County form, when it works well, is democracy 101. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of elected officials. There's a sharing of responsibility. Sometimes there's a clear division between who's responsible for one thing and which official is responsible for others. But that, when it works the way it's supposed to, I think is very good local government, and it's a lot better.
And it especially works well when you want to build something. We know that. So, we know that the sheriff has wanted to build a new jail, yet you guys you paid $100,000 for a study in 2009 that recommended something called a citation and release program. You're getting your first copy hot off the presses. A civic group has produced it. And yet 2 years ago, you were told that you could save $6 to $10 million in sheriff and detention costs if the sheriff just gave tickets to Class B misdemeanors. It's been ignored.
Misdemeanors.
Can it be revisited?
The legislature said no, or actually passed it, but the governor vetoed it, David.
Oh, no, it's a law right now. You can have a ticket for a Class B misdemeanor event. Read the law.
But the general subject you raise is an excellent example of where reform's needed. We need a joint processing center to separate mental health issues from criminal justice issues. We haven't been able to get there. Part of the reason is the way our budget process works. We don't do zero-based budget. Every year we say, well, things are tight. We're going to do a 10% across-the-board cut. Well, that's just the wrong way to do it, because that means the programs that are in place stay in place, whether they're good or not. They're just a little less. And new programs that are needed, like a new mental health program, can't get built. Same thing with a hiring freeze. A hiring freeze means you don't let anybody go. So a lot of people that, frankly, maybe aren't doing a good job are retained, and you're not able to go out and get the right people.
If the savings from this program of the sheriff giving a ticket, which the law allows him to do, could give you 409 new deputies, given public safety demands that there are, would you not be interested in that?
Of course, we'd be interested, but again,
I mean, you want to put them all. You want them all in jails, or you want them on the street?
The judge and the 4 commissioners have general budgetary authority over the sheriff's department, but they do not have supervisory authority over the sheriff's department. They do not have direct. They could pass a resolution tomorrow. That's all it is a resolution. If it deals with budget, they have wide authority there. But on these policy decisions, they're almost primarily left to the sheriff to make those decisions.
That's why we need a new sheriff.
That means we need to go to an appointed system for sheriffs. Vince Ryan,
the Republican sheriff, probably, David.
We invite you to visit our home online at HoustonPBS.org. Check on the local program bar, red, white, and blue. You can read about our guests, watch a follow-up discussion about Ed and Vince. And until next time, get informed and get active.